Yo, 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 what is up, guys? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer. Today had two pretty anticipated games that I was really looking forward to. We had game two of Bucks versus Nets, where the Bucks just kind of got beat really badly last game, despite James Harden only playing 30 seconds of that game. And coming into game two with James Harden out again, the Bucks were out looking for vengeance. They were looking to strike back, take another game, a game that I thought they were going to take. I thought they were going to go into Brooklyn tonight and beat the Nets on their home court, tie this series up 1-1. This was a series that me and pretty much everyone on Twitter really was looking forward to. Me personally, I thought this was going to be a classic type series. I thought it had the potential to be one of the best series we've seen in a while, between a bunch of stars: Jrue Holiday, Chris Middleton, Giannis, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Blake Griffin is still a big name. I thought all of this star power, these two teams that are really looking to prove something, the Nets looking to prove to everyone that the people that said that they couldn't work together, that the trio wouldn't fit together, proving that they can do it, along with the Milwaukee Bucks trying to show that they were not a fraud, that last year was a fluke, and that they're here to stay. Giannis just signed that Supermax, trying to prove that he is meant to be in Milwaukee, that he can win in Milwaukee. Jrue Holiday coming in with something to prove, looking for a championship and looking for his first deep, meaningful playoff run in a long time. And Chris Middleton proving he can be that number two option. Mike Budenholzer and Steve Nash both trying to prove themselves as coaches. I thought this one was set up to be a classic. And then what happened in game one? The Bucks got blown out without James Harden on the court. Okay, it happens sometimes. Sometimes you're not ready. Maybe James Harden off the court even kind of threw them off a little bit just in terms of game planning. They had this game plan, and when James Harden went down, they were like, oh shoot, what do we do now? And then they just kind of got caught off guard. No big deal. Coming into tonight, I said, okay, the Milwaukee Bucks, I even put money on this. I'm 21 now, and so that means I can bet on sports legally. And I was like, you know what? I'll throw a couple bucks on. There was like this decent bet where I could put money on Chris Middleton to score 25 points, and I thought he was going to be able to do that, and the Bucks win. I thought they would even up this series. No James Harden, no problem for the Milwaukee Bucks. They would figure it out, right? They were very close to having the worst playoff loss of all time. They were down by 49 at one point, and the record's 58. If it wasn't for a couple buckets by Thunder legend Justin Jackson at the end of the game, they may have lost by over 50 points. It was really bad. It was awful in a series that I thought this was going to be great. I need to stop saying that series are going to be great series, because half the time when I say it, they turn to blowouts. I said the same thing about Bucks Heat. I said Bucks Heat's going to be so much fun. It's going to be a great series. And then what happened? Bucks swept them. And now what's looking like it's going to happen to the Bucks? The Bucks are going to get swept. This literally looks like the reverse of what just happened. I don't know what to say. The Bucks, Mike Budenholzer and the Bucks look like they haven't watched this Nets team play all season. And they played them multiple times, and it still looks like they didn't watch them play at all. Mike Budenholzer ran a 2-3 zone, which is known for giving up a lot of open perimeter looks against the Brooklyn Nets. A team with James Harden, who didn't even play tonight, but a team with Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Joe Harris, one of the best three-point shooting teams in the league with some of the best perimeter players we've ever seen, and you play a 2-3 zone? Are you kidding me? With Bobby Portis in the middle of it as well, when the Nets are dicing up your defense down low as well, they're getting to the rim pretty much every time they want, and that was the defense he decided to run, and it didn't do anything. It was awful. And then he made bad substitutions, as he has been, and by the time he subbed in his guys to try and play winning basketball again, they were down by 30. Mike Budenholzer has to go. He's not a great coach. He's not fitting for this Milwaukee Bucks team. They probably should have fired him after last season. He's got to go now. I don't care if they win this series. He has shown an inability and an unwillingness to adjust. The only way the Bucks are going to come back after going down 0-2 here, which I really don't even know if it's possible, because I'll get to in a second, that I honestly am starting to think the Nets are just unstoppable. But the only way they're going to come back in this series is if Mike Budenholzer makes some massive adjustments, and he's not going to. So the only way they come back is if Giannis goes berserk, Chris Middleton goes berserk, and they just overpower the Nets without James Harden. And I've been saying for a while, James Harden, in my opinion, is their most important player a lot of nights. Kevin Durant has been incredible. Kevin Durant, I think, is their best player, but their most important player a lot of nights, in my opinion, is James Harden. And he's not on the court for 2 games, and what happens? The Bucks lose by like an average of 30 points. I don't know what you say. honestly, what the Nets are doing makes what Jason Tatum did, beating them in a game, look impossible. So shout out to Jason Tatum for that one, because this Nets team just looks unstoppable. I don't know how you stop the Nets. I really don't. And I picked in my playoff predictions, I picked the Nets to lose in the Eastern Conference Finals. But if you watch me in that video, I said if I had to bet money on any team to win the finals this season, I'm betting on the Brooklyn Nets. The only reason I picked the Sixers is because I wanted to be different. I like Philly, and I thought, oh, maybe they could upset them. I really don't know if it's possible. I don't know if any team can beat this Brooklyn Nets team. Yeah, they had Giannis, the 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, reigning at this point. He's going to be dethroned pretty soon. But the 2-time reigning Defensive Player of the Year, not 2-time, just Defensive Player of the Year, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, got cooked by Kevin Durant. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't stop him. He couldn't guard him. And that's just kind of what Kevin Durant is. You can't stop him. But the Bucks' best hope of winning this series was if Giannis could slow Kevin Durant. And it looks like Kevin Durant is treating Giannis like he's some 12-year-old that he brought to a shooting camp. He's just showing off moves on him. He keeps hitting with killer crossovers. Kyrie Irving had this ridiculous snatch dribble that just stopped Giannis in his tracks and pulled it from 3 and just nailed it. There's nothing they can do. And it's kind of ridiculous how potent this Nets offense is. We knew how good the offense was, but not only that, the Bucks scored 86 points in 4 quarters against the Brooklyn Nets. The big issue with the Nets was their defense. And whether it's just the Nets are locking up, which at times they are, they're playing really solid defense through these first 2 games, or even when the Bucks are getting open shots, they're just bricking the hell out of them. You cannot put up 86 points and expect to not lose by 30 against the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets on every single night are going to put up like 115 to 120. It's going to be very rare that they don't, especially when they get James Harden back, because they don't even have their main facilitator right now, and it doesn't matter. It looks like it doesn't even matter. What do you do? I don't know what you do. It's like, I don't know. It's impossible. This team's really talented. It's not even just Kyrie and Kevin Durant. Joe Harris is killing it. Blake Griffin, I still don't know if he's the answer at center necessarily, but it really doesn't even look like it matters, because even if it hurts them on the defensive end, he adds so much to them offensively that he is able to produce enough to outweigh that sometimes they kind of get beat down low. And the amount of threes that he's going to hit and the amount of open looks they get from 3 just absolutely outweigh any points the other team's going to get in the paint on the other side. So maybe Blake Griffin at the center is the answer. Maybe I'm an idiot, because I really thought going into this series and in game 1, it wasn't the answer. And now I kind of look like a fool. Blake Griffin's been great, but I thought they were going to have to play him at the 4 to be effective, and he's playing the center just fine. So what the hell do I know? I think the Bucks, if I have to give them some adjustment to make, but like I said, I really don't know what you do against the Nets, because even if you're playing great defense, they're just going to hit shots over you. But if I'm the Bucks, I'm playing Giannis at center way, way, way more. He's not playing at center enough. He's just not. They missed Dante DiVincenzo bad, and I think what you need to do is you got to get Brook Lopez off the court sometimes. Brook Lopez was okay, but he just can't guard those perimeter guys. He's dropping back in coverage, and it's forcing them to play a 2-3 zone sometimes because they don't have enough ability to switch playing man-to-man, and so Brook Lopez has to drop back, and that's just not going to work against the Nets. They've got to play more Giannis at center, but I don't know if Mike Budenholzer wants to make adjustments. I think he's just like, okay, I'll stick with this game plan, and if we get blown out, we get blown out. At least we stuck with our game plan, right, guys? Yeah, good thing you stuck with your game plan, Mike Budenholzer, and now you're down 0-2. So that's my quick rant about the Bucks. But I think more so it's just that the Nets are ridiculous. They're unreal. I thought this was going to be a great series, and it still does have potential. We saw the Clippers go down 0-2 against the Mavericks. The problem is where the Mavericks had Luka Doncic, the Brooklyn Nets have Kevin Durant, who's better than Luka Doncic. They also have Kyrie Irving and James Harden, if James Harden comes back. Other than that, they still have Kyrie Irving, and despite not having James Harden, it looks like that doesn't even matter. James Harden, I thought, was a necessity. Maybe he is a luxury. Maybe I'm an idiot. I really don't know. Credit to Steve Nash sticking with Blake Griffin at center no matter what. It's working. And he's made some good moves in this series. I don't know if Mike Budenholzer is going to adjust to anything, like I said. And even if he does, I don't know if it matters. So we'll see about that. I've never felt more, like, over the course of this season, I have not felt more like, not defeated is not the word. It just feels like the Nets are going to run over every team for the rest of the way. It's probably just a prisoner of the moment thing. I still think there are some really good teams. I still think like the Suns could give them some problems, maybe the Clippers and the Jazz. But this Nets team just feels different, man. They just feel so good. And maybe like a Suns or a Jazz could give them problems. Also, the Clippers. The Clippers have kind of star power to match them a little bit, at least right now. But once James Harden comes back, assuming he does come back from that hamstring injury, which I think he will at some point in the playoffs, if it's not this series, which it doesn't even look like they need him, then it'll be at some point soon. But I think he does end up coming back. And when he comes back, I think the Nets just might be unstoppable. That just might be it might just be the fate of this season. That I said this year, I've said this in previous videos, this might be the best year chance that people have to beat the Brooklyn Nets for the next couple years. I thought that this was it. No Dinwiddie. They didn't have an offseason between picking up James Harden to regather depth. And now that veterans see how good this Nets team is, especially if the Nets win a ring, guys are going to go there to ring chase. Guys are going to take discounts. And from there, it turns into the 2017 Golden State Warriors Part 2. So, we'll see what happens. Maybe I'm just being overly pessimistic, but this Nets team really just feels unstoppable at this point in time. So, moving on to a more optimistic type thing. The West has been really fun, which is cool. The Nuggets and the Suns had game 1 of their series today, with the Suns blowing out the Nuggets at the end of this game. It was close. It was only a 1-point game going into the fourth quarter, and ultimately it was just not a 1-point game, excuse me. It was an 11-point game, I believe. So it was still like within reach. It was just in that second half, the Suns really kind of took over. There was nothing the Nuggets could really do to stop them. They don't have the perimeter. This was the big thing coming into this series, is that I didn't think they had the perimeter defenders to stop the Suns' offense, especially when you lack Jamal Murray, who isn't incredible on defense or anything, but he's probably a better option than an Austin Rivers or a Campazzo out there, given the fact that you don't have Will Barton, who is one of your better perimeter defenders. They put Aaron Gordon on Devin Booker, like I said they might, and that kind of worked out a little bit. For the first half, it looked pretty solid, and then it kind of just fell apart at the end when Chris Paul, especially in that fourth quarter, really stepped up. Mikal Bridges had a great game. I love him as a player. He's so fun to watch. He's a great two-way player, great potential on both sides of the ball, someone that I would love to have. Probably any team would love to have Mikal Bridges on their team. With 23, 5 and 5 on really good efficiency. Jay Crowder had a solid game. Devin Booker had 21, 8 assists. He was out there facilitating, playing great basketball without Chris Paul in the court. And then in the fourth quarter, Chris Paul came in and really helped them put it away. 21 points on the game, 6 rebounds, 11 assists. He looked really healthy at the end there. And what really I want to talk about is with this Suns team is how great of a job the front office did of building this team. The Suns coming into the season went 8-0 in the bubble, but they were a team that hadn't made the playoffs in a decade. And they were still kind of going through the rebuild. And for example, when I said that the Suns should trade for Chris Paul, this was something that I pushed all offseason before it even happened. So that's my little pat on the back for myself for this video. I was saying all season that they should trade for Chris Paul. I said it could give Devin Booker a mentor. It could prove to Devin Booker that they want to win. They're going to be a much better team. I said it would probably make them a playoff team, and that it just shows a commitment to trying to win. And people were like, no, that's going to make them like an 8 seed. Like, it'll make them just barely miss the playoffs. There's no point. Like, it won't benefit them that much. And then what the Suns did was they looked at this team. They saw Devin Booker. They saw that they had a star in the making. They saw the potential of DeAndre Ayton. They saw the potential of Mikal Bridges, and they saw what they did in that bubble. And they said, this is the time. This offseason right here is the one where we commit and we make ourselves a contender. Jay Crowder picked up. Chris Paul picked up. Brought back Dario Saric. Kept Cameron Payne, who's been great. Traded for Torrey Craig throughout the season. And you know what happened? They're going to make the Western Conference Finals. The Nuggets just kind of looked outmatched in this game, and I think the Suns just kind of have them outmatched in this series. If Jamal Murray is in this series, maybe it's different. If Jamal Murray was healthy, him and Will Barton, I might have picked the Nuggets to win the West, and I think this would be a better series. But for right now, with the way the Suns dominate and the way that things are looking, I think they're going to win this series, and I would not be shocked if they came out of the Western Conference. And it takes a lot of guts for a team to end their rebuild. I know that sounds stupid, like, oh, why wouldn't a team want to end their rebuild? But you've got to think about it like this. Imagine a different timeline where the Suns traded for Chris Paul, giving up Kelly Oubre, who ends up being a really productive player on the Warriors. They give up Ty Jerome. They give up Jalen Lacroix. Like, they give up these different guys. And they bring in Chris Paul and a lot of money. And they're not very good. Maybe just Chris Paul doesn't play up to the level he played like in OKC. Maybe Devin Booker doesn't make this big jump or continue to improve as he has been over the course of his entire season. Maybe Mikal Bridges isn't quite the player they thought he was going to be. Maybe DeAndre Ayton doesn't step up like he did. And this Suns team finishes 9th in the Western Conference or 8th and ends up losing in the play-in tournament. And they've just now traded some assets for a Chris Paul who's getting old on a contract that, if this timeline happened, now looks like a bad contract, despite how he played in OKC. And now Devin Booker is looking at this team and thinking, we're in trouble. I don't know where we go from here. And he starts to think about maybe wanting out. All of that could have happened if this season went differently. But the Suns said, we're not going to miss out on our opportunity, because some teams end the rebuild too early. Like in that timeline, maybe they ended the rebuild too early, or maybe in a different timeline, they don't trade for Chris Paul and Mikal Bridges gets better, Devin Booker gets better, DeAndre Ayton gets better, and Ty Jerome is a good point guard for them. Ricky Rubio continues to play decently, who they also, I forgot to mention, traded in that trade. And this team starts to get better. They don't make the playoffs this season. Maybe they make it next season and they go, oh, this team is growing organically. But they grow to the level where they're never able to really get out of that first round. They're never able to get much farther than maybe they make like a second round run. Maybe they even look like a Portland right now, who makes a run, but just really ends up in cap space held, and there's no way for this team to get better. And eventually Devin Booker just wants out. That's another thing that could have happened if they didn't make this trade. There are two very different timelines that could have happened, but the Suns took this risk and said, we are ending our rebuild now. We're trading for Chris Paul, we're bringing in veterans, paying them big money like a Jay Crowder, and we are going to end this thing and we're going to make a run at it. That takes a lot of guts in the NBA, especially when the Lakers were the prohibitive favorite to win. And not only that, but the Nets were gearing up out there, the Bucks were gearing up, the Sixers were improving. So many teams out there. The Nuggets look like a huge threat, especially when Jamal Murray was healthy. The Clippers still exist. The Suns looked at all of these teams getting better. The Clippers, or all these teams theoretically getting better. They saw Luka rising. They saw the Clippers getting better. They saw the Lakers getting better. They saw the Jazz getting better. The Nuggets, they saw all these teams improving, and they said, we're going to join you guys. We're not going to shy away from the moment. We saw what we're capable of, and we're going to capitalize. So, here they are. And I think they're going to win this series. I think they're going to end up if I had to call right now, I'm picking the Suns to win the West. It might just be biased because I'm wearing a Chris Paul All-Star shirt from last season right now. Shout out OKC legend Chris Paul. But the more that I watch this Suns team, the more that it just feels like they don't have flaws. Like, most teams in the playoffs still have some kind of flaws. I think that there are definitely some teams better than others. We just talked about how the Brooklyn Nets look unstoppable. But this Suns team just feels great. They feel really good at every aspect of basketball, and a team built like that is built for success. So, I know this is a lot to say coming from this one game, but this is something I've wanted to say about the Suns for a while. The Hawks also had a good example of this, of trying to end their rebuild last season, or over the course of this offseason as well, and it didn't look so great through the first half, but through the second half of the season and now into the playoffs, it looks like a great decision, and so that's a video I could also make talking about the Hawks, giving them credit for that. But I wanted to make this one about the Suns because, they played tonight. So the Suns deserve a lot of credit for how good they're playing. This team really just doesn't have many flaws. And with the Nuggets not having Jamal Murray, not having Will Barton, not having PJ Dozier, I think they're just outmatched. Jokic did what he could. He had 22, 9, and 3. He had a solid game, but DeAndre Ayton really gave him some problems in this one. DeAndre Ayton's just really good. Michael Porter Jr. had a great first quarter, and from there just really didn't do much. Aaron Gordon had 18 points. They just don't have enough scoring. 105 is really not going to cut it with how good this Suns team is, and that's both a combination of the Suns' great defense, able to key in more on Nikola Jokic because there are less options like a Will Barton and a Jamal Murray to stop. So, with all that being said, those are my thoughts on these games, on these teams, on these series. Let me know what you think. Can the Bucks come back in this, or are they already dead in the water? Are the Nets kind of guaranteed to go to the finals and win it? Am I right in being pessimistic that any team can really stand up to the Nets? And in terms of the Suns, do you think that they are going to win the West like I do? And do you think that the Nuggets still can win this series? They definitely still can. I'm not ruling them out at all. But from what I see, I think they're just outmatched a little bit. So those are my thoughts on this series. I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you guys later. Real One, sit back.